The mountain air bit cold against Ethan's face as he hiked the narrow trail behind his cabin. Winter was approaching fast, and he wanted to chop enough firewood before the first snow buried everything. Living alone out here had its challenges, but after years of noise and crowds, the silence felt like medicine. He'd built this life deliberately, far from anyone who might ask questions or expect answers. That's when the sky screamed. A brilliant streak of azure light tore across the twilight, trailing sparks that looked like falling stars. Ethan stopped mid-step, his axe hanging loose in his grip. The object wasn't following the gentle arc of a meteor. It moved erratically, lurching sideways before plummeting behind the eastern ridge with a thunderous crash that shook the ground beneath his boots. For a long moment, he stood frozen. Every practical instinct told him to head home, lock the door, and pretend he'd seen nothing. But curiosity had always been his weakness, the same trait that had driven him into astrophysics before everything fell apart. He adjusted his pack and started toward the ridge. The crash site was easy to find. Smoke rose in a dark column, and the smell of burning ozone hung thick in the air. Trees lay scattered like matchsticks around a shallow crater. At its center rested something that definitely wasn't a satellite or aircraft. The pod-like structure gleamed with an iridescent sheen, its surface covered in symbols that seemed to shift when he looked directly at them. Then he saw her. She lay crumpled against a boulder, one arm wrapped protectively around her ribs. Her clothing looked like woven moonlight, torn and scorched. But it was her skin that made Ethan's breath catch. Intricate silver patterns traced along her exposed arms and neck, pulsing faintly with inner light. Her hair fell in midnight waves across her face, and when she sensed his presence, her eyes opened. They were the color of amethyst storms. "Help," she whispered. The words strangely accented but unmistakable. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering uncertainly. She wasn't human. Every detail screamed that truth. But the pain in her expression, the fear, the desperate hope, those were universal. He gently touched her shoulder, feeling warmth and a faint electric tingle against his palm. "I've got you," he said softly. "Can you walk?" She tried to stand but collapsed against him with a gasp. Ethan caught her, feeling how light she was despite appearing fully grown. He carefully lifted her into his arms, her head falling against his chest. The silver patterns on her skin brightened briefly before dimming to a soft glow. The hike back took twice as long with her weight, minimal as it was. She drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally murmuring words in a language that sounded like water over stones. Ethan kept talking to her, nonsense mostly, just to keep her present. His cabin appeared through the trees like a sanctuary. Inside, he laid her on his bed, the only furniture soft enough. She curled onto her side, her breathing shallow and quick. Ethan grabbed his first aid kit, then paused. What did alien biology even need? Bandages seemed pointless against that glowing skin. Instead, he brought water and a warm blanket. When he returned, her eyes were open again, watching him with an intensity that made his heart race. She accepted the water gratefully, drinking in small sips. Then she touched her chest and spoke clearly. Celine. He understood. A name is turned. Ethan pointed to himself. Ethan. She repeated it slowly, testing the syllables. Ethan. A faint smile crossed her lips, transforming her face from alien stranger to someone achingly beautiful. He smiled back, relief flooding through him. They'd found a starting point. Healing and connection 3 days passed in a strange rhythm. Celine healed faster than any human could, her injuries fading to faint silver scars by the second morning. Ethan watched in fascination as the patterns on her skin seemed to reorganize themselves, flowing like liquid metal beneath the surface. She moved cautiously at first, studying everything in his cabin with childlike wonder. What is this? She asked, holding up a coffee mug with both hands. Her English improved rapidly, picking up words and phrases with unsettling speed. Ethan suspected some kind of enhanced learning ability. He explained objects patiently, enjoying her genuine curiosity. She touched everything, books, his old telescope, even the rough wood of the walls, as if memorizing textures. On the third evening, they sat by the fireplace. Ethan had made a simple stew, unsure if her biology could even process human food. Celine tasted it carefully, then smiled with delight and finished the entire bowl. The domesticity of the moment felt surreal. "My people," she began slowly, "we are explorers. I came to study your world, your species. But my vessel malfunctioned. You're a scientist?" Ethan leaned forward, interested. She nodded. "You understand this?" "Science. I used to be a physicist. Studied stars, actually." He gestured toward the window where the night sky blazed with constellations. Wanted to understand what was out there. Her eyes lit up with recognition. "We are the same, then? Seekers." Something warm unfolded in Ethan's chest. For the first time in years, someone understood that fundamental part of him. They talked late into the night, bridging language and culture with gestures and shared excitement. Celine described worlds he'd only dreamed of, while he told her about Earth's beauty. The oceans, the forests, the diversity of life. "You live alone here," she observed eventually. "This makes you sad?" The question caught him off guard. He stared into the fire, memories surfacing that he usually kept buried. "I needed space. From people, from expectations. I made mistakes, and it was easier to hide than face them." Celine reached out, her fingers brushing his scarred knuckles. Those scars came from a laboratory accident, the incident that had ended his career. Her touch was gentle, questioning. When he didn't pull away, she traced the old burns with fascination. "Pain leaves marks," she said softly. "But marks tell stories. They prove you survived." Her words hit deeper than she probably intended. Ethan found himself looking at her, really looking, not just at the alien features, but at the person beneath. The kindness in her expression, the intelligence, the loneliness that mirrored his own. "Do your people feel the way we do?" he asked quietly. "Emotions, I mean." Celine's hand stilled on his. "Yes, perhaps more intensely. We do not hide what we feel. It is considered dishonest. That must be complicated." "Honest," she corrected. "Your word, complicated, means twisted. Truth is simple." She was still holding his hand. Ethan realized he was holding hers back. The patterns on her skin pulsed slowly, creating soft light that danced across both their faces. His cabin had never felt this warm, this alive. "Thank you," Celine whispered, "for saving me, for trusting me." "Thank you for crash landing near my cabin," he replied with a slight smile. "Made life interesting again?" "Shh," she laughed, a sound like bells. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned against his shoulder, her head fitting perfectly into the hollow of his neck. Ethan froze for a heartbeat, then slowly relaxed, letting his arm come around her. They sat that way until the fire burned low, two seekers who'd found something neither had been looking for. The next few days transformed Ethan's solitary existence into something richer. Celine was endlessly curious, turning every mundane task into an adventure. She helped him chop wood, marveling at the axe's simple efficiency. She learned to cook human food, experimenting with spices until his cabin smelled like a bizarre fusion restaurant. They fell into easy companionship, filling the spaces with laughter and conversation. One afternoon, while showing her how to skip stones across the nearby stream, things shifted. Celine threw her stone too hard, it ricocheted wildly, and they both lunged to avoid it, colliding instead. They tumbled into the shallow water together, the shock of cold stealing their breath. For a moment they just lay there, tangled and soaking. Then burst into laughter. Ethan looked down at her, water streaming from her hair. Her alien features flushed with amusement and something else. Something that made his pulse quicken. Selena's laughter faded as she met his gaze. Her hand came up to touch his face, tracing his jaw with wonder. "Your species is beautiful," she whispered. "I did not expect this." "Expect what?" "To feel ... She struggled for the word, then gave up and closed the distance between them. The kiss was tentative at first, a question. Ethan answered it, his hands sliding into her wet hair. She tasted like starlight and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Celine's patterns glowed brightly, creating a soft corona around them. I should not, she said, but didn't move away. My mission, my people, they will come for me. I cannot stay. I know, Ethan replied, his forehead resting against hers. But you're here now. That evening, she told him everything. Her civilization, the Valoran Collective, sent scouts to catalog emerging species. She should have remained in orbit, observing from a distance. But something had drawn her closer, a curiosity that broke protocol. The malfunction had been partly her fault, pushing systems beyond safe limits. We'll face consequences, she admitted. But I cannot regret what led me to you. They were sitting on his bed, a space that had become less clinical and more intimate over the days. Ethan remembered his stupid joke from that first night, the one about sharing his bed. Looking at her now, it didn't seem funny anymore. It seemed inevitable. Selene, he began carefully. That first night I said something dumb about sharing space. I want you to know I never meant to make you uncomfortable. She tilted her head, confused. You offered shelter. I accepted. Where is the discomfort? In my culture, sharing a bed, it implies intimacy. Physical closeness. Ah, her patterns flickered with understanding. In mine as well. I understood your meaning, Ethan. I simply chose to accept it. His heart stuttered. You mean, instead of answering with words, Selene leaned in and kissed him again, deeper this time, with clear intention. Ethan responded, his hands finding her waist. She guided his touch, showing him where her skin was most sensitive. The silver patterns lit up wherever he touched, creating constellations across her body. They moved slowly, learning each other. She gasped when he kissed her neck, the place where her patterns converged in intricate spirals. He groaned when her hands explored his back, her touch sending electric shivers through him. There was awkwardness too, moments of nervous laughter when biology didn't quite align. But those only made it more real. When they finally lay together afterward, tangled in sheets and moonlight streaming through the window, Ethan felt something shift fundamentally inside him. This wasn't just physical attraction. Somewhere along the way, he'd fallen for this impossible woman from the stars. This complicates everything, he murmured into her hair. Celine's fingers traced patterns on his chest, matching the ones on her own skin. Truth is simple, remember? I feel what I feel, and what do you feel? She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. That I do not wish to leave? That every moment with you makes my world larger and smaller simultaneously? That I am falling in love with a human, which should be impossible? Should be, he agreed. But here we are. Danger arrives the hunters came on the 6th day. Ethan noticed the signs first. Fresh boot prints near the stream, the sudden silence of birds in the eastern woods. Years of solitude had made him attuned to changes in his environment. He found Selene in the kitchen, and the look on his face made her patterns flare with alarm. We need to hide your pod, he said urgently. Someone's tracking it. They'd been careless, too wrapped up in each other to think about consequences. The crash site was obvious from the air, and someone military or corporate had clearly spotted it. They spent the afternoon camouflaging the damaged vessel with branches and dirt, working frantically. Too late. As dusk fell, Ethan spotted 3 figures moving through the trees, equipped with thermal scanners and weapons. They weren't government. The gear was too advanced, too corporate. Private contractors, probably from one of the aerospace companies always hunting for alien tech. Inside, he hissed to Selene. Hide in the cellar. I will not leave you to face them alone. They want you, not me. If they find you, everything gets worse. Her patterns pulsed with distress, but she understood. She kissed him quickly, fiercely. Be careful, Seeker. Ethan met the hunters at his door, plain, confused, and annoyed. They were polite but firm, asking about unusual lights, strange readings. He denied everything, but their leader, a hard-eyed woman named Vex, wasn't buying it. We know something landed here, she said. You've been off-grid for years, but your thermal signature changed 3 days ago. You're using more power, cooking more food. You have a guest? Ethan's mind raced. My sister visited. Left yesterday, Show me your cellar. His blood went cold. Before he could respond, one of the hunters rounded the cabin, dragging a piece of debris from the pod, its surface still gleaming with alien symbols. Vex smiled coldly. Last chance. Where is it? That's when Celine emerged. She stood on the porch, her patterns blazing bright enough to cast shadows, looking every inch the alien she was. The hunters raised their weapons immediately, but she held up her hands in a peaceful gesture. I am the one you seek, she said clearly. This human is innocent. Your quarrel is with me. No quarrel, Vex replied, her weapon still trained on Celine. Just business. You're worth a fortune to the right people. Ethan stepped between them without thinking. She's not a commodity. She's a person. She's an alien, Vex countered. Property laws don't apply. What happened next came from pure instinct. Ethan grabbed the hunting rifle he kept above the door, not aiming at anyone but making his position clear. Behind him, Selena's patterns began to pulse in a rhythm he hadn't seen before, building toward something. I do not wish violence, Selena said, her voice resonating strangely, but I will defend myself and mine. The standoff stretched. Then one of the hunters made a mistake. He fired. Celine moved faster than human eyes could track, her body blurring. The bullet passed through empty air. She touched two of the hunters in quick succession, and they collapsed, unconscious but breathing. Vex stumbled backward, finally showing fear. Leave, Celine commanded. Tell your employers that this world is under Valoran protection. Any further interference will have consequences. It was a bluff, Ethan realized. She had no backup, no authority to make such claims, but Vex didn't know that. She dragged her unconscious teammates away, disappearing into the woods. In the silence that followed, Ethan and Celine stood together, both shaking with adrenaline. Then she turned and kissed him desperately, as if afraid he might disappear. They stumbled inside, need and fear and relief overwhelming everything else. They made love with urgent intensity, each touch a reminder that they were alive, together, still fighting against impossible odds. Afterward, lying in the darkness, Celine spoke softly. My people will come soon. The pod sent a distress signal before it crashed. I hoped for more time, but after tonight, they will accelerate. How long do we have? Days, perhaps only hours. Ethan pulled her closer, memorizing the feel of her against him. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Dawn broke cold and clear. Ethan woke to find Celine standing by the window, her silhouette outlined against the sunrise. Her patterns glowed softly, almost sadly. He knew before she spoke what was happening. They're here, she whispered. He joined her at the window. High above, barely visible against the morning sky, a shape hung motionless, too large to be any human craft. Selena's rescue had arrived. She turned to face him, her eyes wet with tears that glittered like diamonds. I have to go, she said. If I don't, they'll assume I'm being held hostage. They'll intervene, and people could die. Ethan nodded, his throat too tight for words. They'd both known this moment was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. Celine took his hands, her patterns flaring brightly. Come with me, she said suddenly. My people would welcome you. You're a scientist, a seeker. You could study things beyond your wildest dreams. We could continue what we've started. The offer hung between them, tempting and terrifying. Ethan imagined it, living among the stars, exploring wonders he'd only theorized about, waking beside Celine every day. But he also thought about Earth, about humanity still finding its way, about the life he'd built here even in isolation. I can't, he said finally. Not yet. I have things to resolve here, people I hurt that I need to face. Running away to the stars, that's just hiding in a different place. Selena's face crumpled with understanding and grief. I know, and I love you more for choosing the harder path. They held each other as the sun climbed higher. A beam of light descended from the ship, creating a column of soft radiance in the clearing. Their time was up. They walked together to the beam, hands clasped tightly. Will I ever see you again? Ethan asked. Celine reached up to touch his face one last time. The Valoran Collective monitors developing species for generations. I will request a return to continue studying Earth. It may take years, but I am patient. And Seeker, you now know we exist. Perhaps your people will reach for the stars faster, knowing what waits among them. She pressed something into his hand, a small device that pulsed with the same rhythm as her patterns. If you need me, speak to this. I cannot promise I can come, but I will hear you. Always. Then she stepped into the beam. The light enveloped her, lifting her gracefully upward. Ethan watched, shielding his eyes, as she rose toward the impossible ship above. For a moment he saw her clearly one last time. Silhouetted against the sky, raising her hand in farewell. The ship shimmered and vanished. Leaving only empty blue sky, Ethan stood alone in the clearing, the device warm in his palm. The loss hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath. But underneath the grief, something else grew. Purpose. Celine was right. He'd been hiding long enough. It was time to face his past, to rebuild, to become someone worthy of an impossible reunion. He looked down at the device, then up at the stars, still visible in the morning sky. Somewhere up there, she was looking back. And someday, whether in months or years or decades, they would find each other again. The universe was vast, but love made it smaller. Ethan turned and walked back to his cabin. It's no longer a refuge from the world, but a temporary stop on a much longer journey. He had work to do, wounds to heal, a life to rebuild. And when Celine returned, if she returned, he wanted to be someone she could be proud of. The stars had given him a gift, then taken it away. But the hope remained, burning as bright as the patterns on her skin. It's promising that some stories never truly end. They simply wait for the next chapter to begin.